Dropshipping is dead. Look, selling cheap crap from China is way too saturated, it's way too competitive, and shipping times are just way too long, and it will never work. And so if you're wondering if dropshipping is dead because of this, here's the news flash. People will always buy crap online. And so if you believe that dropshipping is dead, then it just tells me that you don't really understand what dropshipping is, because it's not even a business model, it's a fulfillment model. And so if you just look at the stats for e-commerce as a whole, it's been growing year on year. If you look at the amount of sales that's happening on Amazon, it's been growing year on year. And if you look at projections in the future, you'll see that it will continue to grow year on year. And so if you're going to dismiss all of these statistics on e-commerce growing year on year and say that dropshipping is dead because nobody wants to buy your cheap product, which has a 90-day shipping time, being sold on your crappy looking website, is just pure ignorance. What's better is that you accept that millions and millions worth of transactions are happening on stores every single day, but it's just not happening on yours. Now, I'm here to help you try and fix that, because most of the time, people that fail with dropshipping, they usually tend to make the same mistakes. Most people fail with their stores because they sell products that are of low quality, have very slow shipping times, and have a high percentage of being received by the customer in a damaged state. And this just leads to people not trusting in your brand, and you wonder why you end up not being able to build a loyal customer base for your store. But the truth is, we can pretty much fix all of these problems by just simply using suppliers that provide higher quality products, way faster shipping times, and a very low percentage rate of damages on arrival. And this is how you end up building a brand that people can trust, which eventually leads to you having a very loyal customer base. And that eventually leads to you making a lot of money online. And bear in mind, this is how some very, very successful brands started out, such as Gymshark, Fashion Nova, and a bunch of others. Okay, look, so we all know that a lot of suppliers on AliExpress aren't brilliant to work with, right? But let's start off by actually discussing AliExpress first before we get into the alternatives that I would recommend you guys. Because sometimes you can find really, really good suppliers on AliExpress for very specific products. Now, I've personally worked with loads of suppliers on AliExpress with absolutely no issues. So if you do find a product that you do want to test on AliExpress, then the first thing that I would suggest is look into the supplier's score rating. If it's under 4.7, then it's a red flag. You want to look for suppliers that have a high rating, because those are the ones that tend to have more experience and tend to be a lot more reliable to work with. And if you see that they have a supplier rating of above 4.7, then it's a much better sign that that's a supplier that you could potentially work with. The second thing you want to do is you want to actually reach out to every single supplier that you acquire from. This is something that I see a lot of people in this space not doing, because you really want to see how good their communication is. You don't want to do business with a company that you can't even have an actual dialogue with. And for every single product that I test, that's something I absolutely always want to do. I want to reach out to that supplier to see if they have good communication. And I use pretty much the same template almost every single time I reach out, because I don't want to waste time manually writing out messages, especially if I'm reaching out to 20 or 30 suppliers for the same product. And that template pretty much covers all the questions that I have for the supplier. It asks things like if they can handle more than 50 orders in a single day, so that you know if this is a supply that you can scale with. It asks what is the average shipping time to the USA or the desired country that I want to target for that specific product. I ask if they give refunds for any sort of damages. That way, if they do end up sending products that customers complain about because it's very, very poor quality, that's something I can then get refunded from the supplier, so I don't have to lose out on that money. And the last thing I ask is just whether they offer private label services, and that's basically them putting my brand logo on the product. And that's something that's very important over time if I want to scale, because if I get to a point where I'm getting 10, 20, 30 orders every single day, then I want to think about ordering a larger quantity of that product with my logo on it. So that allows me to reduce my cost per unit and also allows me to brand the product a lot better. And so the whole purpose of me reaching out is for two things. The first, like I mentioned, is to see if they have very, very good communication and how professional that supplier is. The next is to tell me whether it will be a problem to deal with in terms of shipping and damages. So by actually reaching out, you're just reducing your chances of working with a really crappy supplier. And this is such an easy step to do, but I see a lot of people in the dropshipping space just not doing it. Now guys, if you want this exact same message template so that you can use it to reach out to suppliers the same way I do, then click the link down in the description below, add me on Discord, and I'll be sure to send it to you completely for free. Now, normally as I message these suppliers, I do have a very sly trick to try and get them off of AliExpress. Now, this is something that I figured out on my own, and I do this because the messaging feature on AliExpress really, really does suck. It's full of bugs, it's really annoying to use, and it's a massive headache if you have any experience with it. So what I end up doing is I try and connect with them on WeChat. And that's because it's a very, very popular app that people in China use. But the problem is you can't simply just message them on AliExpress and say, hey, add me on WeChat, because AliExpress will flag that word and then block the message. So you have to be a bit creative. And what I end up doing is just asking them to add me on WeChat. So I just add a bunch of W's, a bunch of E's, a bunch of spaces, and it looks a bit weird, but they understand what I'm saying, and they understand why I'm saying it. It's because AliExpress wouldn't allow me to send that message if I didn't write it that way. So I know it's a weird way to do it, but trust me, it's way better talking to them on WeChat than it is on AliExpress. They will be more active and you'll be able to have a much more professional dialogue. It gives you the opportunity to present yourself with more professionalism. It gives you an opportunity to discuss business with them, to get them more excited about collaborating with yourself. And over time, if you build that relationship with them, they may end up even suggesting you new products that are very, very hot in China right now. And that's something a lot of the suppliers that I work with in China do with me, and it's a massive advantage to have. Okay, so you can see that AliExpress isn't always bad, so don't listen to everybody on the internet who says that AliExpress is awful for every single supplier. AliExpress is just a marketplace for loads and loads and loads of different suppliers. You just have to filter out the crap ones. But there are some really good alternatives that I want you guys to look out for. The first is working with a private supplier, and by working with private supplier agents, you can get a very specific quote for your product, and a lot of them can end up giving you 2 to 5 day shipping times for your product. And that's because they have warehousing usually in the desired country that you're deciding to sell in, whether that be USA, UK, etc., which is just such a big advantage, especially if your target audience are in that country. And so on top of the faster shipping, they also offer quite competitive pricing. And not only that, a lot of them are really good to work with when you want to scale and grow, because they offer custom packaging, which will increase your brand strength. So you may already be sold and think, yeah, cool, this sounds like a great avenue to find a supplier, but how do you actually get hold of a private supplier? Well, there's loads of different ways to do it. There's thousands of private suppliers out there, but in my experience, Fulfillment is a great option. I've personally used Fulfillment in the past, and so I can tell you guys that they're very, very good, especially when it comes to global fulfillment. So they're very fast with their shipping times in the US, in the UK, in New Zealand, in Australia. They're a very good private supplier to work with, and they're very professional. So I would recommend them to you guys. And there's a few other services that they offer which are quite interesting. And one of them is product photography. So you can kind of hit 2 birds with 1 stone on this one. If you have your supplier take professional photos of the product for you, I think that's a great service for them to offer. Now, personally, I have never used it, but I know people who have used that service from Fulfillment have had a very, very good experience. And yes, they do give you the opportunity to white label your product. So they're a great private supplier to scale with in the future, because you can brand your packaging, you can get your logo on the actual product. And trust me, when you start to get a lot of orders, that's definitely something you want to do. Now, guys, I do want to mention that when you are new to this and when you're just starting out, speaking about all these suppliers, getting quotes, you really need to be careful that you don't get scammed, especially when you're sending a load of money if you're ordering in bulk. Because back in 2020, I got scammed myself out of 3,200 USD because I sent it directly to the supplier's bank, and that supplier just ended up blanking me and never shipped out the product, and that caused me such a problem during that time. So please, guys, be extremely careful, especially when you're speaking to a supplier and especially when you're sending them money directly to their bank. I don't want you guys to make the same mistake that I did. And so that's why I suggest using a private supplier that you know are trustworthy. In my case, I would recommend you guys Fulfillment. I know that they're trustworthy. I've had very, very good experiences with them. Now, it can be a tricky task to actually work with private suppliers like Fulfillment right off the bat, because a lot of them try to avoid working with complete beginners, but there are really, really smart ways around this. Now, there are some other really good private supplier agents out in the space, like Commercive and even Zendrop. And you may have actually heard of Commercive because the owner, Sam Jacobs, has his own YouTube channel that you guys can check out. Also, Zendrop, I've mentioned to you guys in the past, their customer support is brilliant. And a lot of the products that they have can actually be shipped directly from their US warehouse, which have 2 to 5 day shipping time. Now, again, guys, I mentioned some of the private suppliers that you come across may have a minimum order quantity per day, but this is where you need to get a bit creative to get ahead of others, especially if you're a beginner. Now, the first thing I'd recommend is very simple. You need to start a dialogue with these private suppliers and present yourself as a professional. Negotiate with them and tell them that you are confident that you can scale to 10 to 15 orders every single day, but that in the initial period, you would love to collaborate with them and have their patience in the beginning stages. It's basically just using a bit of sales tactics. Connect with them on a personal level. Try and create a real dialogue, because a lot of these suppliers, they can be convinced to work with you, even if they know you're a newbie, but they feel that you're presenting yourself as a professional and that you're a serious business trying to grow. And so essentially, my best advice suggest to you is compose yourself as a professional when you reach out to private suppliers. I've reached out to many as a beginner looking for a very new product and wanting to ship it on a dropshipping basis. I didn't already have orders coming in for that product, but I convinced that private supplier to work with me in the initial period and to have patience with me as we grow together. Now guys, to sum it all up, we do know that AliExpress is filled with slow shipping times, poor product quality, but the truth is that you can suss out the best suppliers nowadays by being very, very committed to messaging a bucket load of suppliers for that same product, whether it be on AliExpress, whether it be reaching out to private suppliers. You need to get active and start dialogue with loads of suppliers when you're trying to find the best one for one specific product. Don't just go with the first. I highly recommend that when you find a product that you guys want to test, reach out to 10 on AliExpress, reach out to some on Alibaba, reach out to some private suppliers to ask them about the product. This way you're actually building your network and making really, really good connections. And like I said before, this is what ends up with you building relationship with these suppliers over time, and then they can end up actually giving you advice on products that they think are performing very, very well right now in China. And that way you're ahead of the curve of everybody else in the dropshipping space. And so this all starts by just reaching out and having conversations with multiple suppliers about the same product. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there, and don't do what everybody else does, which is just find the cheapest supplier and the first one they come across and start working with them without even starting a dialogue. And so right now, because I've been in the e-commerce space for over 6 years, I've connected with a bunch of suppliers over the years, and they've suggested so many products to me that are growing in popularity, and they're always trying to share with me the things that are hot right now, because they understand that I am somebody who can actively make stores and launch new products extremely fast. And I've built that relationship with them over time, and that's why they recommend products to me, because ultimately they want people that are going to buy the product and are able to shift the product. And so if you can present yourself as that person, then they will give you product recommendations on things that are starting to grow in popularity right now. And so guys, ultimately just don't be lazy and use the first supplier that you see on AliExpress, which is just basically what everybody else does. And if you're serious about dropshipping, then you will take that advice, and I promise you won't regret it. If you have any questions about anything I've gone through in this video, feel free to DM me on Instagram or join the link in the description below to my Discord, and you can private message me there.